Can you hear
Oh,
me?
that's great. That's great. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Okay, it's my pleasure.
So, I invited you on because I've followed you for a while. We met briefly 2 years ago at the Personal Democracy Forum, and I read your posts. I'm one of your fans on Huffington Post, and you're all over the place with good stuff. And I've seen the trainings that you run. I found out you were on the board of the Sunlight Foundation, where my nonprofit, opednews.com, got a small grant, and that's all about transparency. And I wanted to get a feel for what you've learned. You've become a master of the Internet universe, really, with one of the most influential sites on the web that has had a huge impact on the future of journalism and newspapers. And I wanted to chat with you about what you've learned, what philosophies you've developed, and where it's taking you.
Well, in a way, the things I've learned are, in some respects, the things I've always known. We can see that people are fundamentally trustworthy and good. I mean, there are some bad guys out there, but the percentage is pretty low. And the more you give a voice for everyone else, the good guys, you'll see that come out. And by doing that, by treating people like we want to be treated, somehow that's created a culture of trust on the site. Again, there's the occasional problem, but because the bad guys, even though there are very few, they make a lot of noise.
And they're so obvious, God. When I do stuff with Craigslist, which I do, the bad guys just about scream at you, I'm a bad guy. They're so transparently bad.
Yeah, the spam is is increasingly obvious. Now and then you'll see a phishing scam, but most everyone, at least in the U.S., is getting to recognize a phishing scam. Sometimes people will ask me about stuff. Partially people do it is to see if it's really me on the other side of Craig at Craigslist.org. So that really is my email address.
Yeah. You must have your share.
I have all sorts of adventures. Works out pretty well for me.
So, looking at your recent postings, you're writing a lot about how to make the web better, how to get transparency, how to get a bigger voice for people. Do you have a mission or a vision that you've got kind of in your head of where you're going and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I figure I've done 15 years worth of customer service at Craigslist, and I'm figuring customer service, if you do it in good conscience, is a kind of public service. So I figure I'll extend that mission beyond Craigslist. And so what I'm doing is working with other people to do a much better job of customer service, sometimes where they need a hand, and mostly that's in convincing upper management to listen to their people and then to follow through.
Well, my radio show is called Rob Call Bottom Up Radio Show, because I believe that the web has caused a revolution in the way our culture works, and even for young people, the way their brains work, that they've shifted from top down to bottom up. And it seems like an awful lot of what you're doing is all about enabling that in more places and ways.
Well, you're right. I have observed also, both when I worked for IBM and elsewhere, that in any large organization, the rank and file folks, the people at the bottom of the corporate hierarchy, they're the folks who know what's going on and how to fix it. And what people need is a way to talk about it, to affirm each other, and then to get upper management to commit. So I'm working with that, on that subject with people, say, at Veterans Affairs in Washington. And today I committed to following through even further with that, because we've already got results.
So you're working with Veterans Affairs, eh?
Yeah. Well, I started working with a group called Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and these are the people who helped get the GI Bill passed, despite the opposition of the last administration. They helped get back pay for stop-loss veterans despite the previous administration's wishes. And now they're doing things like getting better medical benefits, better medical claims processing for veterans. And that's the kind of stuff I'm working with folks in Washington.
And how are you working? What is your role, and what are your goals in working with them?
You know, what people tell me they want from me is basically affirmation of what they're doing, just encouraging people to work together, to do things together, that I'm involved in the competition and judging, because what the VA is starting to do is run innovation initiatives with actual rewards and stuff like that. So I've gone to Washington to help judge that kind of thing. I'll be back at the end of April, and I'm committing to expanding that in scope. But all of it, in a way, has to do with cheerleading for the people who are getting the actual work done. Now, I'd like to spare you the actual imagery of me cheerleading. But putting that aside, the deal is, in a way, a lot of the work simply says, hey, these folks are doing really good stuff. Let's at least recognize them for that.
So what do you think in the last couple of years has improved in government and through the web, or whatever ways you've looked at and worked on, and what ways is improvement needed still?
Well, right now, the folks in the White House are laying the grounds for a much more accountable and transparent government, one that actually listens to people and does something about it. So what they're doing, for example, is putting a lot of government data online and working with folks like Sunlight Foundation to make it easy for us to access. The idea is you see where the money goes, and when you see where the money goes, you know what's going on. For example, the results of that, in the Washington Post today and online, you can see a database of congressmen who've been paid a lot of money by the health industry, and you can see what the results are. The people who are most against health care reform are the people who've taken a lot of campaign contributions from the health industry. So it's kind of scary, but at least we can see, what's going on. We can follow the money.
That's a big step.
It's big. A lot more is going on. It's slow, but we're actually seeing a lot of agencies opening up, showing how they work, what's going on. It's really painful because this is all new for them, and they're having to do a lot of cultural change, because in previous years, people in different federal agencies were told to hide things. They were told that their work didn't really matter. They were told government's the problem. So they had to hunker down and not do too good a job, because, in the past, doing a good job was career limiting. And now things have changed, and people are coming out, but it's slow and painful.
Is transparency a partisan issue, or is it something that is responded to equally in a bipartisan way?
Well, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. People from both sides have responded. There have been some people who've come out strongly against it. Particularly a few senators on the Republican side who are blocking the release of campaign finance information. It's not as simple as I'm making it. It's a long story, but the deal is that Roberts and Ensign have been against it, as well as McConnell. And all they got to do is decide to release something, bring it to the floor, and then they'll start putting campaign finance data online. The deal is, if something isn't online and searchable, might as well not exist.
Yeah. So if it's on paper, it's just about worthless.
Well, if it's only on paper, it doesn't do anyone any good. It needs to be, put out in database form. That actually means something. That's something that people can search on, and that matters. But you got to wonder, if somebody's blocking this kind of thing, what's being hidden?
Yes, really. It makes me think of the project that Google is involved in, taking hundreds of thousands of books and putting them online in searchable form. Because it's not just new information that the government has, but you look at the size of the Library of Congress and all the records that there must be back there. It would be nice to have it all searchable and with all kinds of neat ways to process the information. Where are we in terms of that? I mean, ideally, I would think that would be the ideal outcome, that you could do a search and find out the budget for Ulysses S. Grant at some point, even.
At some point, I do think everything should be online, but we do have to respect the rights of authors and publishers, because writers, got to get paid. We need, we need books just to make things really happen, and I'm a big believer in that. The tragedy there is that independent bookstores are going out of business because of the chains, but also ebooks, and no one has a solution. Even though I spoke last night with somebody who runs a great independent bookstore called Book Passage in my area, they have a lot of writers come in to do writings, and that's my idea of something that's exciting.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm with you. I think that we got to protect authors in some way. Lawrence Lessig wrote a piece the other day where he argued, though, that some of the copyright protections, like the TV networks are doing with YouTube, are blocking the nature of the web's many-to-many character. Right? But I think that's different. I know on my site, opednews.com, I publish with permission. Now, I ask somebody first, and I get their permission, and if I don't get it, I don't publish their stuff. And there are way too many people out there who don't do that. And it's a hard thing to police even, but it seems to me like it's the right thing to do. Part of the reason I do it is because I made my living as a freelance writer for a while, so I'm very sensitive to it.
Well, the deal...
But
Well, Larry Lessig has done a lot of good work along those lines. Part of the Community Commons. Oh, I'm forgetting the name of it right now. But the Copyright Commons, they've done a
Creative Commons.
Creative Commons, you're right. They've done a lot of good work, and I think it's really important. I believe in what they do.
I think it's all part, the Internet is this huge disruptive technology that's changed everything in a lot of ways for good, and it's created all kinds of chaos, but Prigogine was a chemist who got a Nobel Prize for proving that out of chaotic chemical reaction came higher levels of order. So that's my mantra when I face chaos. We're going to end up in a better place from all of this.
I agree. The deal is that I think this decade we're going to see a big, let's say, redirection of human history where people work together a lot more. There are people who do work against that because it threatens their profits, but I think it's inevitable. The idea is I'd like to see it happen faster rather than later because we got to work together to solve a lot of common problems like the economy, for one thing.
Yeah, really. Well, it seems to me like you're very taking that very seriously and doing it. And God, how many projects are you involved with?
Well, I want to make sure that you don't give me too much credit. The deal is that I'm looking at a lot of efforts. My role in most of them is to talk about them, maybe give some advice on social networking, but really I'm just helping the people doing the heavy lifting by letting the public know what's going on, because the people doing the hard stuff need the support of the public. So again, I'm a cheerleader despite the ugliness of that imagery.
Okay, so you give advice on social networking. I'm real interested in that. Today the news is that Facebook passed Google in terms of visitors, and that tells me that social connection is more important than information. And I threw this at George Lakoff, who I had on just before you, and he was, and I said it to him right when he was saying that the problem that the Democrats have in their messaging is they think it's all about telling people the truth and information when it's really about social connection and empathy and values.
I tend to agree, and he's done some pretty good work. The deal is he's the good counterpart to Frank Luntz.
Yes.
And, what Lakoff is doing is really good stuff which helps the country, and we got to encourage more of that.
Well, the reason I brought him up is because I had mentioned to him about how Facebook had overcome Google because it was social networking. So, and you mentioned that social networking is something you give advice on. So I'm curious, what kind of advice do you give to different groups in terms of social networking considerations? What are your thoughts and philosophies on it?
Well, basically I just tell people that it is pretty important and that they would need to cultivate a large network of supporters. They got to get on Facebook, maybe a Facebook fan page. You got to start using Twitter, and then other networks depending on what you're trying to accomplish. It's pretty situational, and beyond that, it depends on what the specific efforts are. Frankly, last night, because of something I was invited to my surprise, I wound up giving social networking advice to Desmond Tutu, because he's trying to fund a peace center, and the deal there is that they need to push it harder. They need to raise money, and so a lot of this stuff needs to be done. And I've been told I'll be hearing from his media people as to how to do a better job of it.
And what will you advise them? Any particulars that would pass along to other applications as well?
What I'd suggest is just starting with Facebook and Twitter and seriously engage with people. Put stuff out there in a very personal tone, no need for fancy language. Then put more stuff out there and engage with people. Also, take a look at the microfinance models embodied in both Kiva and also Donors Choose. The deal is that people can fund stuff $20 at a time or more, and that's what makes a difference.
Have you had any contact? Do you work with those two, Kiva and Donors Choose?
I work a fair amount with both of those.
Yeah.
Sometimes sending money, sometimes funding some efforts. And the biggest contribution they tell me, though, is talking about what they do, getting the word out, like on shows like this.
Well, talk a little bit about them. I know a bit about Kiva, and I'm assuming Donors Choose is a similar micro-lending thing that is inspired by Muhammad Yunus, right?
Not quite that. I may have given that misimpression. The theme is that the Internet allows a site to ask millions of people to help out with something. In the case of Kiva, you can contribute money to small business people. You're giving them loans, and ultimately that creates jobs, and they have a very high repayment rate. With Donors Choose, the deal is in the U.S., a teacher can put up a classroom project which needs funding, and then you can fund it a little bit at a time. And the idea is that teachers do get project funding, are held accountable for project completion, which means that now and then I get thank you notes from kids and so on saying, hey, here's a project that got done, and now and then I'll blog about it on Newmark.com.
Could you give an example of a Donors Choose project that made you happy?
Right now I'm trying to think of some of the things where people just, they wanted some digital cameras to document what their school's about, what they're working on. They put it all up there. That worked out pretty well. Frankly, what I think about most is some of these projects are from very poor schools, and the projects are just to help kids get enough pens and paper to do some writing. Because in places, like I've kind of adopted a school in South Carolina where they don't have enough supplies or anything. They're really poor, so I'm helping them out that way, and that's providing genuine help.
It's nice that you're doing this. So is it Kiva.com and DonorsChoose.com?
Kiva.org and
Kiva.org.
DonorsChoose.org. Yeah, these are nonprofits.
They're nonprofits. Okay. Are there any other sites like that we can share the word about?
Well, in that line, there's lendforpeace.org, which is specialized microfinance for the West Bank of Palestine. I've spoken with the Israeli government, the State Department, the Palestinian government. Everyone wants jobs created, there, because that means if you have a job, you're not going to throw a rocket.
Sounds good. I know I have listeners who are seeing that I've got Craig from Craigslist on. So can I ask you one question about Craigslist?
Sure.
What are there any features that are really cool that people don't generally know about that would make it better for them to use it more effectively?
Well, we experiment with some things, like multi-city search in some areas where it makes sense, that kind of thing. But for the most part, we're straight ahead, very simple and fast. The idea is there's other things that we look at, but the highest priority based on what we hear from people is to do a better and better job getting rid of spam and so on. So that's the kind of thing that we focus on. The deal is, let's do one thing really well, and then maybe go a little further than that.
Did you ever think of doing something like eBay does and give people ratings or anything like that? Or
I do think reputation systems, reputation engines, will be a big part of our future, because in real life, online life, whatever, a lot of what we do is based on who do you trust, and trust is based on reputation. But I think we're going to need a system where a number of companies provide reputation databases, which are all interchangeable and all that. So we're looking for trustworthy companies to build this all out. And frankly, the companies I trust more are ones like Facebook or Google, who consciously think about what are the social effects of what they do, what effect Google has.
I missed the last thing you said. It broke up.
The deal is what Google and Facebook consider what their effects are on people, and that matters. It's like the don't be evil thing.
Yes. So this is a fascinating idea. So you're basically saying that there would be across different websites some shared resource of a trust engine or a reputation engine.
Yeah.
It's a really cool idea that it would kind of give to the I wonder, do you have any thoughts of who would own it or how it would be run? Because it also makes me think of the credit agencies now that are kind of out of control.
Well, the deal is I do think it needs to be supported by a number of big trustworthy companies so that no one controls it, because this is just too important in our lives.
Really.
I can't think of anything really more important overall than trust. I mean, there's some obvious things you can think of, like your bank account or something. But yet, we make decisions based on who we trust. And there's a lot of untrustworthy folks out there who are really good at scamming people, sometimes politically. I think George, Mr. Lakoff, just addressed how to deal with some of that. But the deal is that we got to look out for each other. We got to figure out what you can trust and what you don't want to trust.
Last year I interviewed Stephen Covey, the junior, I think, and he's written a book, The Speed of Trust, about how trust speeds things up. It makes things work better, more efficiently, more effectively, gets things done. I think trust is a huge part of this bottom-up revolution that's taking place, and you've mentioned it a couple times. Where does it fit into? Keep talking about it. Tie it in with your transparency, for example.
The deal is that all of us as individuals, companies, governments, one way to build trust is to tell people as much as you can about what's going on. I mean, there are obvious limits. Sometimes there's sensitive financial information you can't disclose. If you're a government, you probably don't want to tell people about nuclear weapons, that kind of thing. But the idea is that you try to disclose as much as you can, and you do what's reasonable. And in fact, I think it was yesterday, Congressman, I think Shell Israel, proposed the Putting Information Online Act, or whatever it's called, which basically says for the executive branch, put everything online, let people know what's going on. And, things like that really do matter.
How's that getting picked up with the signers?
Hard to say. As I blogged about it yesterday or so, you can check cnewmark.com to get a pointer to this stuff, and you'll see some of the related stuff on sunlightfoundation.com and that kind of thing.
Okay. Where do you see things going? You've been at this a long time. You've taken a site to be one of the most visited in the world, helping, I guess, millions of people, Craig?
From as far as we could tell, we've probably helped out some tens of millions of people.
Tens of millions.
Yeah. The deal is we are helping them help each other.
Helping them help each other. Now that's, the interesting thing is Lakoff talks a lot about moral politics and how conservatives are into independence. And helping people help each other, that's something that is kind of gives people independence, and that seems to be a thing that would work for everybody there. I guess my interviews bleed into each other. Sorry.
Well, I'm what I'm calling a libertarian pragmatist, meaning you want a balance of independence and you want a balance of people helping each other out. You want both, and all that works together real well.
Libertarian pragmatists. Are there many of you out there?
I think I'm the only person using the label. I invented it for myself. There are plenty out here because most people, as far as I can tell in the internet industry, are pretty much what I'm calling it.
It's a neat concept. That is a nice direction for libertarianism to go.
It ain't bad.
Yeah. So I was going to say, where do you see things going? You've taken the long view. What do you see as the way our culture is changed by the web and the technologies we're experiencing today?
I think over the next decade, people are going to work together through the net way, way more, to the extent where we are going to see bottom-up change in tremendous amounts. In politics, commerce, just people socializing, the threat to it are when people try to hijack legitimate bottom-up movement.
How's that?
Well, if you look at the Tea Party movement, because there's multiple parts to it, there are parts that I like a lot that retain their independence. Even when I disagree with them, at least it is bottom-up. There are parts, though, that have been hijacked by influence peddlers, and we need to work together online to point out the influence peddlers, and then to, just to expose them. And when everyone sees what they're up to, then we can deal with them.
Well, wait, I need a little more clarity on that. You're saying that the Tea Party people have had kind of a bottom-up hijacking by influence peddlers, so I need a little bit more definition on hijacking and influence peddlers.
Well, the deal is a lot of the Tea Party movement is genuinely bottom-up, and I like that. However, there are parts of it which have been hijacked from the top down by influence peddlers, people who are actually went to great extent to break government when they were in power. For the best research on this, look at the Center for Media and Democracy site online. I think they're at like prwatch.com or something like that. But the deal is, these are serious investigative journalists who take a look at stuff, they document what they find, they provide reliable information, and we need a lot more of that.
Okay. This has been great. Thank you so much. This is Rob Kall Bottom Up Radio Show. I've been talking to Craig Newmark of Craigslist. Come back next week, Wednesday, 9 to 10 p.m. And Sundays, it's the Rob Kall Future Health Show. And sometimes they just bleed into the other. I've got an interview that is coming up with Carolyn Mace that is going to knock your socks off and and she's a consciousness person who got political. Craig, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
One last thing. I'm going to click. We're off the air now.
Okay.
I had emailed you about getting permission to reprint your stuff that's on Huffington Post with a link back to the site.
Sure.
Can I do that?
Yes.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Will I see you at Personal Democracy Forum? You're going to be there again?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Hey, good night. Bye.